All right, hey everybody, Rick Howard here in the DoD Contract Academy. Thanks for tuning in this week. I have a guest who's returning again to talk about the latest updates with Use Rogue. We've got John Ferry here. John, hey, how's it going today?
Good, Ricky. How are you doing?
Just living the dream, man. Living the dream. Using Use Rogue quite often, which is why you keep coming back on here. And so for those, I could explain it, but people are probably tired of hearing me, talk about different things. So why don't, for anyone that's just, if this is the first episode they've heard with you on here, why don't you talk a little, just give us an overview, who you are, what is Use Rogue, what does it do? And maybe we'll start there.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. Yeah, so John Ferry, co-founder and CEO of Use Rogue. It's a platform where we integrate generative AI, right? So think the types of things you get from a chat GPT, but we really built a platform specifically for bid and proposal writing, right? And, I've got 15 plus years in the GovCon space. One of the things that I enjoy the least is writing proposals, but it's also that it's that task that you can't get around, right? It's that like 80-20 rule. You can do all the engagement with the customer that you want, but at some point you have to sit down and write some form of a proposal, or else you don't get the work. So with generative AI, it burst onto the scene and to everyone's consciousness when ChatGPT really came to fore. And we were actually building before that, because I have a background in AI. And so we were like, hey, AI can do this stuff. We don't like doing this stuff. So let's build a platform that can do this stuff for us. So that's how Rogue was born, and we've been adding features and functionality to it since we launched.
Awesome. No, that's great. And then for anyone listening, so you can go back and take a look at the initial episode that we did together. So, we really get into John's life and his background and, the nuts and bolts of how he ended up developing. So it's a really interesting story. And this generated a lot of excitement on my part, and I know on a lot of people that are in the federal government space, because, just what you said, proposal writing is such a huge pain in the ass. And RFI response writing, sources sought. I'm not going to get into what that is. I've got probably 100 episodes on just responding to those alone. But it's a necessary part of the game of influencing requirements, and then of course the proposal itself. Not only a huge pain, but because sometimes you're talking about not just a 10 or 20 page proposal, but you could be talking about a 100-page proposal for a big effort.
Yeah.
And not only is that time, but if you have to pay somebody to help you with that, look, and I've helped people write proposals a lot. You could very easily be spending 10 or 20 grand on proposal writers to help you go after an effort. And companies do it because if the result's going to be a $5 million contract or even a $500,000 contract, it's worth, getting, someone to help you out and make sure everything's right. So when I saw Use Rogue was an AI tool that could potentially help me write some responses. And by the way, I was using ChatGPT to kind of help, before. And, if anyone's used it, it has a lot of limitations, right?
Yeah.
Besides, first of all, it's not designed to write proposals. So it's taking a guess and you don't know where the information is coming from. But also, you could be limited in the length of, what you're writing. So just a quick synopsis of where I'm at now. And I'm not usually bringing people on multiple times. There's only a few people they know, like usually really specific subject matter experts. But I've been using this a lot to generate proposals for myself. We've been staying in touch about the different updates and whatnot. And so when we started using it right away, what I loved about it was I could upload anything that I've written. Right. So, and correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, because this is my understanding of the tool, and you can tell us about some of the updates here, but you can upload anything that you've written. So if I've written a bunch of RFIs already, if I've written proposals, I can put that in there and then use some of the features of Use Rogue to just pull from what I've written. So it's not pulling necessarily from, the internet and stealing from other people. I can say if I have a technology that's pretty specific, it can start pulling that into the document for me, so I don't have to, duplicate my effort. It can rewrite it for me. It can change the word count, which I believe is a feature that finally got added, which I'm pretty happy about.
We listen to our customers, Ricky.
Hey, that was one of the top ones on my list. So I really love that feature. Even things like use cases, right? So like, I'm going to have documents that have use cases in them, and so now I have to reconstruct them or pull them out. But now, it makes it pretty easy and cut and dry to just have it in there. And again, it's not the. I don't want anybody to think that, and maybe you disagree with this, but it's not the 100% solution for me. But it
No,
gets
and,
me pretty
and
far
no,
along.
nobody wants it to be the 100% solution, right? Like it's kind of dystopian if you're thinking that like
Yeah,
the government's going to publish solicitations with AI and then industry is just going to use their AI to respond to them. It's just going to be the AIs talking to each other, right? Like change the use case. That's the fear of every human on earth. And so no, like you don't want it to. The government doesn't want an AI written proposal, right? That's
right.
that's not what they're paying for. They're paying for your unique solution. And the way I describe this is like if you're worth your salt, if you're in this game, right, you're trying to provide solutions to government customers, they want your particular approach and you can articulate that approach in probably 10 seconds, right? Whether you're talking professional services, material, training, what have you, you can articulate that. The challenge comes, right? The reason why you got to pay $20,000 for a proposal writer is that you then have to take that 10-second sales pitch and turn it into a 150-page proposal, right? And the first cost plus fixed fee proposal I won, I think the total page count ended up being 130, 150 pages. And I paid $20,000 to a proposal manager to help me tackle that,
Yeah.
eat that elephant. And that was inexpensive for what I got out of it. So that's our philosophy there. So 100%. And then, yeah, really the way we built the tools was we looked first at what are the things that GovCon companies do when they do proposals, and then we just tried to apply AI to that, right? So, we all have a shelfware file, right, where we go back into our old proposals that are really good, the ones that won, the ones that have really well articulated sections of content about our professional services or supplies or whatnot. And we take those sections of content, we reuse them, right? We try to reformulate them. That's stuff that AI is really good at. So we tried to make the workflows intuitive and automated so that rather than you having to go in and harvest your old content, your old proposals, your slick sheets, just let the AI do that. It's capable of doing it. And exactly to your point, then you're not using Chat GPT that's talking about generic, professional services. It's talking about your specific professional services because you've written about them before. So
Right.
it's yeah, there's a lot of different AI products on the market, and I'll editorialize a little bit. A lot of folks kind of said, "Hey, ChatGPT is cool. We can use this for 5,000 different uses," and they just kind of cloned ChatGPT and stuck a database behind it. We have a chat interface. It's used for a particular purpose in our workflow, right? So, yeah, we really try to build all the features around how humans already do proposal writing and just kind of AI powering a lot of those things.
Yeah, it's interesting because this actually, what it reminded me of as you were talking was how I advise people to approach the government for sales, right? Which is when you were talking about ChatGPT, which is a lot of people make the mistake of going into a government office and saying, "Hey, I can do everything. I can do anything you want." And I was on the receiving end of this, right? So I'd have cybersecurity. I'd need someone to do. I use penetration testing as an example, but someone would come in. I need something specific, and they're like, "No, we do 1,000 different things. Here's the capability statement. It has like 100 things on there." And I'm like, "Oh, great. So we could do it all." But then someone comes in and is like, "Hey, we're the penetration testing experts. That's all we do. These other things you're talking about, great. Hire that other company that does 1,000 things. Well, we do this. Who am I going to hire?" Right? It's
Right.
the company that does the penetration testing. And for this, it's designed for proposal writing, and it shows in the use. So everyone knows this is something that I use. I've been using it for a couple months. I paid for it as soon as it came out, because I just wanted to see what it could do, and I want to make sure that I'm actually using something if I'm promoting it on the podcast. Before we get into, because I know you're going to go over some new features with us that have recently come out. I just wanted to talk about, you mentioned that 130 page proposal that you wrote, right? And you paid someone 20 grand to do it. If you had had Use Rogue at the time, and this is something I'm curious about, what do you think Use Rogue could have done for you? And how would it have changed the way you approached that particular proposal?
That's funny because the the trauma of that proposal is part of what fuels how I think about the features we implement, right? Because like that's the mindset I try to put myself in when I'm thinking about like, oh, should we build A or build B? So a couple of things. We built what's called multi-tenancy. So if you use like Google Docs and you can have multiple people working on a document at the same time, we built that feature into the platform because what I really didn't enjoy was the fairly standard process of like give the proposal, give this section to Jimmy. He has 5 days to write his portion and then check it back in. And then, sometimes there's tools that like merge those different sections together and make kind of the almost like the branch merging from a coding perspective. Like I hated that because if I want to work on that piece of content, right, I have to wait 5 days until Jimmy's done with it, and then he's going to check it back in, and then I have to check it back out. He has to wait. So building multi-tenancy in, we've seen a significant advance in just the ability for folks to actively collaborate while they're writing, right? Get on a Zoom call, get both of you in one document, and just power write constant, right? I think that's huge.
Can you
Reformulating.
give me an example before we move on from that, right? So let's say that that me and you are writing the majority of a proposal, right? And maybe we're in the technical section where we're going through the specifics. How does that work if me and you are in there, and maybe you're handling the first three technical objectives, and I'm handling the last three? How would that work? How would we both be editing that document? Could we both work on it at the same time and it tracks changes? Is my stuff going to change yours? And then, of course, if I did change something that you wrote, do you have a way of seeing that? Like, what's how should I think about that?
Yeah, I mean it's live. It's just like a Google Doc. So if you're both in a document at the same time, you can see each other where each other's cursors are. So, hey, Rick, I'm gonna work down here in paragraph 3. You work on paragraph 2, and you real time see each other's changes as you
Okay.
add to the documents. So, I personally like to do it in real time. Like pull up a Zoom call and like let's virtually be in the same room actively writing at the same time. Different folks have different processes that they use and we don't really want to get in the way of that, but we want to give them the tools to be able to really empower their processes with these new features that are available in other software tools, but don't actively come into GovCon SaaS as quite as quickly. So
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. And I cut you off there, so you were getting into some of the other features.
no, I think so. That's a big thing. The snippets function, where you have essentially a real time shelfware content. I mean, that was directly off of one of my major pain points, which is like, hey, I have to write a request for information response. It's 14 bullet points. I'm going to reuse, 6 sections of content from 5 other RFIs I've already written, right? Like if you focus and you stay in the same sort of market, right? I focus on DoD, I focus on professional services. The content is a little bit different, but you're going to reuse your best and brightest content over and over.
Right.
So we built in the snippet shelf so you don't have to go into your old proposal. And in some cases, you don't want the AI necessarily organically generating that. The snippet shelf, you can just pull that best of breed content right off the shelf and drop it into your documents really quickly. And I
Okay.
really like that because I hate what a time waste it is to go into my share drive and have to like control F for that particular part of content where I talked about how good we are at, business and financial management. Now we just
Right.
have it on the shelf. Um, and I think the new feature that we just rolled out last week, where we upload the RFP and it parses it into the separate volumes and automatically generates an outline for each of those volumes. So like 10 seconds replaces maybe only 30 to 30 minutes, 2 hours worth of someone's time.
Yeah.
Again, like going back to the first 5 days of a proposal writing process, right? You've got a 30-day clock. The first couple of days are always somewhat harried because you just got the final RFP. You're going to break that thing apart. You're going to divvy up sections. Someone typically gets assigned the task of building out the initial templates. Well, the AI can do that first initial template generation for you, and you can skip straight to the part where people are starting to write on documents, and
That's great.
multiple people can write in documents at the same time. So there's no time lag between flash and bang. You can go straight to adding value and responding rather than wasting 48, 72,
That's
96 hours.
interesting. Yeah, it sounds a little bit different because as I was using it, before, I know there was a section where I could kind of type in what the sections needed to be, right?
Yep.
Like, hey, there's going to be an introduction, there's a cost section, blah blah blah. Now you're saying, I think, that you can upload the entire RFP and it figures it out.
That's
Pretty
what we're
amazing.
going for. Yep.
Oh, that's good stuff. All right. Well, why don't we bring it up and you can walk us through some of that.
Sounds good. Let me try to share my screen here.
Cool. And for everyone listening while he's bringing up the screen, if you're looking at CMMC, if you're looking at FedRAMP and you don't know what to do, head on over to our website. We've been helping a lot of clients lately as this has been picking up. You can go to dodcontract.com/CMMC and you can see what we're doing there and put your name and email in and we can set up a consult. So, okay, back to this. So John,
Awesome.
you have just pulled up use Rogue here.
Yep. So, and we just released a new landing page, I think yesterday or the day before, a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer.
Oh,
The
look at this.
responsiveness is actually snappier. So we are constantly trying to optimize the entire experience.
Okay,
So here's
awesome.
my proposals for folks who haven't seen this before, right? We keep the main thing, which for us is writing proposals, right? This is what we're here for.
Mm-hmm.
So this new feature I talked about it's really trying to like streamline that initial phase. So, I'll spin up a new proposal war room here, which is kind of how we do proposal management and knowledge management in the same context. So we essentially have a virtual version of a proposal writing war room where we manage all of the documents and you can move them through like your proposal process on a Kanban board and whatnot. So what you were talking about, Rick, is the current process, right? For an auto generation, you can put in these 3 bits of data: a document title, a concise description of what the government is looking to buy,
Mm-hmm.
and then your document template is kind of the headers that you want to put into that document, whether it's an RFI or sources sought, what have you, or a full RFP response. So that's kind of the current way of doing it. So the new way of doing this is to upload an RFP. Give this a second to drop back in.
And then just for everyone listening, as I was looking through what you have in there, you're using this for a lot of different things. I saw SIBR proposals in there. I saw kind of normal proposals, RFI, social sought response. So this has a lot of different use cases.
That's right. And we try to keep the interface incredibly clean, right? We want the workflows to apply to many different writing tasks, right? So we don't want a user to have to come in here and have a different button for, I want to write an RFI, I want to write a, sources sought, I want to write a full-blown 7-volume RFP response. The workflow is applicable to all those different GovCon writing tasks. And we stay very disciplined on how we build out the user experience.
Okay.
So this new feature we're talking about, we can either paste the content in or we can upload a Word document. We're working on getting to being able to upload our PDFs. There's some weird formatting stuff that can sometimes, depending on how they save the PDF, sometimes it actually throws off the character saving. So we're working on that extract. But right now, you can export the PDF to a Word document and then just upload this Word document. So I'll go ahead and upload that. Right here it is loaded. And then I'm going to start generating templates off of that.
Okay.
So that guy goes in, it finds the stipulation, right? Sections L and M, where the government tells you how they want your proposal to come back. And it starts auto-generating those sections.
Oh, look at that.
So I can go.
So, by the way, so for anyone that doesn't, just if you're listening to the podcast, essentially he uploaded the Word documents and then all of it analyzed it, and it just started generating different sections: executive summary, exceptions, acronym list, technical approach, management approach. So it's and with sub bullets to each of those. So this is really interesting.
Yeah, if you're listening to the podcast, it's worth it to go look at the YouTube video.
Yeah, check out the YouTube video. Oh, and by the way, if you go to use Rogue, tell them that you discovered this on the podcast, and you may have some special incentives there, and that aren't available to everyone.
So now we have these documents that the AI kind of auto-generated. So I'll pick one of these to pick on, maybe the management approach, right? So we've got the document title here. So the AI auto-generated and included the title for the volume that the government stipulated. It's included in the document template the sections that the government solicitation stipulated for that particular volume. And this is volume 5, the management approach. And so I'm going to drop in what we call the description. And this is just the concisest articulation of what it is the government is looking to acquire. So, the background paragraph of a performance work statement. It could be the actual technical description of what the government wants for a development contract, what have you. So we'll paste that in. I think there's a 4,000 word character count. And then in the document template, I can actually start doing some of my initial outlining for the document, because the AI is going to use that as its guide for its generation. So here they gave us 5 elements, and I can add to those elements with my particular approach to writing. So, my management approach could include recruiting and retention plan, hybrid workforce management.
And what this looks like for everyone listening on the podcast is there's just a block that's on the document template block. There was a auto-generated list, and John's now just typing, because he knows, because he's written a bunch of these, hey, I'm going to have that recruiting and retention plan in there. So he's adding to the list before it generates the actual document.
That's right.
Yeah, the interface it's very clean, and simple to use. So I've been using it, and I love some of the updates that we've seen so far.
Appreciate that, Rick. We live off of user feedback. I mean, the way we prioritize new features is basically if 2 or more customers say they want the same thing, that automatically moves to the top of the list. Let's go with.
And I don't necessarily want to talk about pricing, because pricing can change, depending on when someone's listening to this. But I did see some recent changes that I think make it easier for an individual. If you may be a solopreneur or a salesperson working for a company, and you're looking for just one license. It looked like it's relatively reasonable to be able to come in and use this and cut for the amount of time that you're going to save. I pay people. I pay a lot of people to generate stuff for me, and this saves me money just being able to use it.
Yeah, I mean, your post on the Upwork life hack of like leveraging Upwork to get freelance writers to write proposal, absolutely. And maybe you provide those freelance writers with some AI tools.
Yeah, exactly.
So for
a starting point,
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's one of the things we talk about is if you work, whether you work in a highly technical field or not, if you're writing a proposal, typically you have to get your operational folks, whether it's your program manager or the folks down on the line, to contribute some degree of content, or else your proposal is not really going to be authentic. And so a lot of our folks now use this, hey, get on Rogue, you only need to take an hour or 2. And where you previously would have maybe gotten bullet points back from those, frontline folks over email that you can then turn into what your technical approach might be. Now you can just say, hey, get in there, jot your things down, and use the AI tools to kind of accelerate your writing task. So the amount of value you can get out of your people, kind of harvesting that knowledge and experience, because you've given them a tool that allows them to express more quickly and with less frustration, honestly.
Yeah.
So the way this works is the AI takes the contents and the semantics of the document title and the document description, right? So that bulk piece of government provided text. and it starts contextually generating content for each of the sections you outline. So you can build in a bunch of outline headers here, right? I added recruiting and retention plan and hybrid workforce management approach under element 1. So I just kind of did very light solutioning for this volume of the proposal, and it started contextually generating content for those sections, right? So I went, what has it been, 5 minutes? I went from the just straight up RFP to something I can actually start working on in a document.
And just
which is
for everyone not seeing this, it generated about a paragraph of information under each of the sections that you put in there, and it also, in some cases, put subsections with a paragraph of information below. So let me ask you this: that information right there, is that pulling from stuff you've already written, or is that just kind of taking a guess, doing whatever the magic is behind AI and giving you a starting point?
So there's a couple of elements here. I specifically in that outline, I told it to incorporate Navy experience, DARPA experience, and IWTSD experience. So one of the features I'll talk about a little bit later is we built in essentially a company persona field. So within the platform, you can build in a number of different, what we call organizations. So you can have, an organization that does professional services and another organization that does engineering services. And you might want to contextualize those organizations differently, right? Depending on what customer you're selling to or what services or products you're trying to sell. And in that, you can build in some background information, basically persona information like past performance that you want to have incorporated into your proposals. And so that's where some of this stuff comes in. But I think what you're getting to is the deep dive feature, right? So for those of you not watching, we have essentially a chat interface built into the platform, into our version of Microsoft Word. So as you're writing, you can use that chat interface. And what I can do with this interface, and when I turn on this deep dive mode, when I have deep dive turned on, the chat is not just a general GPT that's tuned to proposal writing, which is cool in and of itself. And that's where we started. But with deep dive turned on, it actually indexes off of all of the content I have in the platform. This is what Rick was talking about earlier. So I can ask it to, describe this. And I misspell things in every demonstration.
That's all right. I'm doing the same thing. I probably misspell half the podcast descriptions. I should probably start using Use Rogue to generate those for me.
I have started doing some of those things also, just to save myself from myself. Be very technically specific. So I know that I've written about our facilities in the past, right? I know there's at least 3 or 4 proposals in there that have descriptions of our facilities in there. So I don't want to have to go in and find those things and regenerate them or pull them out. So I just told the chat here, describe our facilities in Tampa, Florida. So if I have facilities all over the country, I don't want to talk about all of our facilities. I want to talk about a specific facility that's relevant to this proposal. So I told it to describe our facilities in Tampa, Florida, and be highly technical, right? And so it pulled out our high performance computing capabilities, our big data applications, some of our security features and whatnot. So the things I've already written about, it pulls that up.
That's great.
Right? Off of semantic search, it pulls that stuff in and basically hands it to the model. Say, hey, use this when you generate. Right, this is your context. The other thing I can do here is I can actually select a piece of content. So I can select here. I'm just dragging and selecting for those listening a bit of content. This is like a sentence, and I can tell and when I select it, it automatically highlights that in the chat interface. So I can say something like, expand upon this and be very descriptive. So you don't have to be a prompt engineer and know how to do all the context window stuff, but you can give the chat instructions, right? Treat it like a junior assistant writing professional, and it'll start building out that content, right? So 15-year history, which is accurate, right? I have statements in past RFI responses talking about our past performance supporting the Navy. It will incorporate that and start building out generative content, right? It starts talking about PPB&E because I've written proposals. I have proposals in the system talking about our PPB&E support to the Navy. So again, rather than having to go in and find that content and regenerate it or, rewicker it, I can just generate it straight off the chat because it's pulling up my content. It's not just generating some general material.
This
I can
is,
just
yeah,
drop
this
that
is
in.
so, I just want to foot stomp this for everyone, just how important this is, because even if, so for everybody out there that has written a bunch of stuff, I mean, if you've been doing this for a while, you're going to have multiple RFI, sources, sort responses, and proposals, right? And trying to figure out, it's always a paperwork trail. Hey, I can pull from this one, I can pull, or I changed this one right here. You have a section in here where you could just load everything. And this is exactly what I've done. And even if and by the way, that's the reason that's valuable, is it's pulling from all this information that you have about your product or service. It's not going like ChatGPT just goes out there, to the world, whatever was in the system in, what was it, 2021 or whatever. And,
Right.
And it can give you some great stuff, but it's not your stuff, right? This is very specific, right? You've loaded the documents that you use for winning contracts. And even if you don't have that, right? But if you do have a company, I know you have white papers most likely, and, like capability statements and marketing documents, things that describe your tool. Like I've uploaded for me personally, I've uploaded all that stuff too, because that has some great information in there. Like I have really technical things that we could potentially stick in the proposal. So now I can just go in and say, hey, show me, you pick the cybersecurity model for blah blah, right? And it'll just start spitting it out. It saves so much time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's frankly how we built it out was, what are the things we do that we don't like doing? Let's make something that does that for us. And I mentioned the snippets tool previously, so I'll just bring that up here, right? So there's a little search bar here.
Oh, can you show me that again? So,
Yeah.
and for
So
everybody here, he's just scrolling across the top of the user interface and clicking on the snippets button.
yeah, so show snippets, and it pulls out this window, right? And in this window it's basically a content shelf of bits of text, right? It can be fairly long sections of content. And the idea here is like, when I describe my company, I want to describe it the same way every time, right? I don't necessarily want the AI to generate a brand new way of describing my company. So I'll save that in here, right? If I have particular ways that I do like ISO 9001 processes, I don't really want the AI generating that. That's a very specific thing I want to have saved. If I have really great content that has been powerful in the past that the government really likes, I want to save that, right? I want to have that usable, but I don't have to go search for it. And so
Did you, for these snippets, because you typed something in and it brought some up, but are these snippets generated for you or did you go in specifically and save each one of these, like highlight some text, save it as a snippet?
that's exactly how this works, right? So if I'm writing, similar thing, right? I can just click drag a section of content, and this button right here with the plus sign, I just add that as a snippet, right? Okay. So if I'm writing and I like, hey, that's really good, that's some potent work right there, I'm going to save that for later, you can automatically just save it to your shelf.
Okay.
And then if you want to go back and use it later, right? Like, hey, I need to talk about my DARPA experience. We'll pull that right up and we'll drop it right in. Right, you don't have to go searching for it. It's already indexed, and all of those snippets are also indexed by the AI. Right, so it's almost like having individual small proposals that are saved on that shelf. So you're not losing out on that value when you're doing the organic generations.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, it could be like, so. I mean, I had a small ad for CMMC earlier, which I'm sure you are familiar with, considering what you're doing. But you may have especially with maybe an RFI source of sort response, you may want to let them know that they can have confidence in you because you have, hey, I've done the self-assessment for CMMC. We have our SPRS scores in there. Or, hey, maybe we're a software company in the cloud and we want to talk about FedRAMP. So that might be a good place to have snippets that, when you have something, because the words matter especially when we're talking about compliance, right? So if I want to talk about the fact that we're FedRAMP moderate, that's going to resonate with the government, and that's something you could just keep in a snippet maybe and add in here.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm going to show one last little feature we added not long ago. So we're working on images. Images are actually challenging, and they don't add a lot of value from the generative standpoint. But
Hmm.
one thing we did add was support for tables. So we can use the chat here. Um, highly technical personnel.
And
And I'm just
you're just so everyone knows, you're typing in make a draft staffing matrix for highly technical personnel.
right.
And now you're adding the personnel that you want included.
No, not even. I'm just going to tell it what to build.
Okay,
I'm telling it include 4 years, right?
gotcha.
So how many years of a staffing matrix do I want? If I want to build in like pricing or whatnot.
This is ridiculous. This
So 20.
I'm just thinking about how long it would take me. And I mean, I can use Excel and I can make, I mean, most people listening to this can use Excel. They can build charts and whatnot. You can build a matrix, but this just generated the entire thing for you. Um, I mean, that would what would that have taken? I mean, just getting the information for that could take you an hour, right?
Yeah, just
Um,
copy pasting the individual sections of text into the individual Excel cells, right? Just the formatting headache of that is ridiculous. So for everyone listening, like all I did was I selected, right? I click dragged the actual like technical description from the government. So I provided that to the chat interface as context, and then I said, "Hey, give me a technical staffing matrix for this, and include 4 years." And it built out 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, and it put in a PM, a chief scientist, a senior engineer, and a data analyst. And if I want to, I can add additional sections in here, right? So there's all this sort of tableization features in here. And it's those little things, those like low value time sucks that we focused on first, because AI is not going to replace, right, the brain housing group, but it can definitely replace those low value tasks that we all have
yeah,
to do, right? The like mundane, monotonous, mindless tasks that we have to do, like convert this paragraph of text into a staffing matrix. Like I hate doing that.
yeah,
So we built a
that is
tool for
painful. And I wonder if it. I'm guessing it can do this to a certain degree, but maybe not perfectly yet. But you could tell me. So, some things that we're writing are going to be specific, like with SBIR, right? You typically are going to need a commercialization plan.
it.
Will this right now give me like what a commercialization plan should look like, or I mean, that's going to be specific to your business, right? But you might not know if you're writing it for the first time. You might not know what that structure looks like, right? So, what does that look like on paper, or even labor rates and things like that. So it would be interesting to see as if it's not in there now, like, hey, how can I just take kind of these standard sections for different types of proposals and give me the outline for what is going to need to, the outline that the government might be looking. Granted, everyone's a little bit different, right? But
Right.
um, a lot of people have never written a proposal before, so that I think would help them tremendously.
Yeah, I would say is like if you ask it to do something, it will do something. So if the
Yeah,
government has not given you a format, right? Sometimes we get the unsolicited proposals, or hey, send me a white paper, or use whatever format you want. I
yeah,
personally I like that the least, because
you're
it's
guessing.
kind
Yeah,
of right, it's a colored rock problem. Fine. But if you've never done this before and the government did not give you a format to work with, right? If they didn't tell you how to format your staffing plan, yeah, it'll give you a staffing plan, right? It'll give you a pricing matrix. I can tell this thing to give me 4 years of a pricing matrix, and it'll spit out a pricing matrix. I can ask it to build me an LCAT matrix, and it'll start putting in draft labor category rates in each one of those sections, right?
oh,
It can
interesting.
do that. If you have it from the government, you can provide that, and it will build within those restrictions. So
Okay.
there's some learning curves for certain things, but the AI can definitely do a lot of those things.
Yeah, this is such a time saver. So, um, for those listening to what our plan is on the podcast side is we're going to release a few episodes here going through the summer of using the tool. And so I wanted to bring John on here today to go over some of the new features and show you what it looks like. And then coming up, you'll see me and maybe some of my cohorts using this for and working through how we use it. And it is really a time saver. And I just want to bring as much value to those that are listening because it really is going to save you a lot of time and
For
probably
sure.
money.
Yeah, no, I mean, with our anecdotal measurements, we've done some sort of measured runs of, hey,